My name is Sarah, and 3 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was 28 years old, living in a cozy apartment with my boyfriend of 4 years, planning our future together, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire world was about to implode in the most humiliating way possible. What happened next changed everything about how I see love, money, and what people are really capable of when greed takes over. If you're watching this story unfold, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from, and hit that subscribe button because what I'm about to share will completely change how you view relationships and the power of financial independence. Before we dive into the chaos that became my life, let me paint you a picture of who I was back then. I worked as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized tech company, making a decent salary, but nothing extraordinary. My days were filled with campaign strategies, client meetings, and the usual office politics that come with corporate life. I lived simply, saved what I could, and genuinely believed that love and partnership mattered more than material wealth. My boyfriend Marcus was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. Charming, ambitious, with these big dreams about starting his own consulting business. He had this way of making me feel like we were building something together, like we were a team working toward the same goals. We split expenses fairly, took turns cooking dinner, and spent our weekends exploring the city or binge-watching series on Netflix. It felt real, authentic, like the kind of relationship that actually lasts. Marcus worked in finance, always talking about deals and investments with this confidence that made him seem so knowledgeable about money. He would explain market trends over breakfast, analyze stock movements while we walked through the park, and constantly mentioned how he was positioning himself for a major breakthrough. I admired his ambition, even when his schemes seemed a little too good to be true. Looking back now, there were signs I completely missed. The way he would suddenly have expensive dinners with potential investors, always picking up the check with a credit card I never saw the statement for. How he started dressing better, wearing watches and shoes that seemed way above his pay grade. When I asked about these upgrades, he would flash that charming smile and say business required a certain image, that you had to spend money to make money. I trusted him completely. That was my first mistake. The unraveling began on a Tuesday morning in September. I was getting ready for work when Marcus sat me down at our kitchen table, his expression more serious than I had ever seen it. He took my hands in his, looked directly into my eyes, and said words that still echo in my mind today. Sarah, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out completely before you react. My stomach dropped immediately. Those are never the words you want to hear from someone you love. I nodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming, thinking maybe he was having second thoughts about our relationship or was stressed about work. I've been offered an incredible opportunity, he continued, his voice steady but distant. A chance to join an exclusive investment group that could set me up for life. We're talking generational wealth, Sarah, the kind of money that changes everything. I felt a wave of relief. This wasn't about us breaking up. This was about his career, his dreams finally coming together. That sounds amazing, I said, squeezing his hands. Tell me more. His expression shifted slightly, and I caught something in his eyes I had never seen before. Calculation. Cold, hard calculation. The thing is, this group has very specific requirements about the people they work with. They need to know that everyone involved is completely focused, completely committed, with no distractions or divided loyalties. Okay, I said slowly, not understanding where this was heading. They've made it clear that serious relationships, especially with people who aren't in their income bracket, can be seen as liabilities. These are people who move in very different circles, Sarah. Their wives and girlfriends are from established, wealthy families, people who understand their world. The words hit me like a physical blow. I pulled my hands away from his, staring at him in disbelief. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, avoiding my eyes. I'm saying this is the opportunity I've been working toward my entire life. And sometimes, to get what you really want, you have to make difficult choices. Difficult choices, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. You're talking about our relationship like it's a business decision. Everything is a business decision at this level, Sarah. You don't understand how this world works. These people control billions of dollars. They can make or break careers with a single phone call. If I don't fit their image of who they want in their group, I'll never get another chance like this. I stood up from the table, pacing to the window, trying to process what was happening. 4 years together. 4 years of building a life, making plans, talking about marriage and kids, and growing old together. And he was throwing it all away for money. So that's it? I asked, turning back to face him. You're just going to walk away from everything we've built because some rich people don't think I'm good enough for you? It's not about you not being good enough, he said, but his tone suggested otherwise. It's about compatibility. These people expect their partners to contribute financially to the lifestyle. They want someone who brings assets to the table, not someone who needs to be supported. The insult stung worse than anything he could have said directly. I had never asked him to support me. I paid my own bills, contributed equally to our shared expenses, and had built my own career. But apparently, that wasn't enough for his new wealthy friends. Who is she? I asked suddenly, the pieces clicking together in my mind. Marcus looked genuinely confused. Who is who? The woman you're leaving me for. Because there's no way you're walking away from a 4-year relationship just for some abstract business opportunity. You've already met someone in this group, haven't you? Someone who fits their requirements? His silence was answer enough. Her name is Victoria, he said finally. She's the daughter of one of the founding members. But Sarah, this isn't about her. This is about securing my future. Your future, I said, laughing bitterly. What about our future? What about everything we talked about building together? Those were dreams, Sarah. This is reality. This is a chance to have the kind of life most people can only imagine. I looked at him sitting there at our kitchen table in the apartment we had chosen together, surrounded by the life we had built, and I realized I was looking at a complete stranger. The man I had fallen in love with would never have valued money over loyalty. The man I had trusted with my heart would never have seen me as a liability to be discarded. Get out, I said quietly. Sarah, let's talk about this rationally. Get out, I screamed, surprising myself with the fury in my voice. Pack your things and get out of my apartment right now. As Marcus gathered his belongings, moving with the efficiency of someone who had clearly been planning this conversation for weeks, I stood frozen in the living room, watching 4 years of my life get packed into boxes and suitcases. Before he left, Marcus had the audacity to hand me a business card with his new contact information. When you've had time to process this, maybe we can stay friends, he said, as if he had just canceled dinner plans instead of destroying my entire world. I threw the card in the trash the moment the door closed behind him. The next few weeks were a blur of tears, ice cream, and angry phone calls to my best friend Jessica. I took time off work, barely left the apartment, and spent most days replaying every conversation, every moment, looking for clues I had missed. How long had he been planning this? How long had he been lying to my face while I made dinner and talked about our future? Jessica was furious on my behalf. He's going to realize what he lost, she kept saying. These rich people will chew him up and spit him out, and then he'll come crawling back. But I knew Marcus better than that. He wasn't the type to crawl back from anything. He was calculating, ambitious, and now that he had made his choice, he would see it through no matter what the cost. What hurt the most wasn't just losing him. It was the way he had made me feel worth kind of bird and holdingless, like I was some him back from his destiny. His words echoed in my head constantly. Someone who needs to be supported. As if my middle-class background made me inherently less valuable as a human being. I started having nightmares about running into him and Victoria at restaurants or events, imagining her as some perfectly polished woman with designer everything, looking at me with pity or disdain. I created entire scenarios in my head where I would see them together and feel completely inadequate. After 3 weeks of this self-imposed isolation, Jessica finally staged an intervention. She showed up at my apartment with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine, refusing to leave until I showered, and had a real conversation about what came next. "You can't let him win like this," she said, pointing her chopsticks at me for emphasis. "You're acting like he was right about you. Like you really are some kind of liability. Where's the Sarah who got promoted twice in 2 years? Where's the woman who organized that charity drive that raised $50,000? You're letting him rewrite your entire story. She was right." But knowing she was right and actually doing something about it were two completely different things. I felt hollowed out, like Marcus had taken not just my heart, but my entire sense of self-worth when he walked away. "I just keep thinking about what he said," I admitted, "about not bringing assets to the table. Maybe he had a point. Maybe I was holding him back." Jessica slammed her wine glass down so hard I thought it might break. "Are you kidding me right now? You have a successful career, your own apartment, your own savings account. You're educated, independent, and you are building a life together as equals. If that's not enough for some snobby investment group, then they can all go to hell." Her words sparked something in me that had been dormant for weeks. Anger. Real, burning anger at the way I had been discarded like yesterday's trash. At the way Marcus had made me feel small and worthless. At the entire system that valued people based on their bank account balance instead of their character. "You know what?" I said, feeling fire return to my voice for the first time in weeks. "You're absolutely right. I'm done feeling sorry for myself." That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to just get over Marcus and move on with my life. I was going to prove him wrong in the most spectacular way possible. I was going to build the kind of success that would make his exclusive investment group look like a children's lemonade stand. I started researching everything I could find about wealth building, investment strategies, and entrepreneurship. I read books, watched videos, took online courses, and absorbed every piece of information I could find about creating financial independence. Not because I wanted to win Marcus back, but because I wanted to prove that worth isn't determined by who your parents are or what social circle you're born into. Within a month, I had identified 3 different business opportunities that aligned with my marketing background. The first was a digital marketing consultancy focused on helping small businesses compete with larger corporations. The second was an online course teaching marketing fundamentals to entrepreneurs. The third was a content creation agency specializing in social media strategy. Instead of choosing one, I decided to pursue all 3 simultaneously. I knew it was risky, maybe even crazy, but I was fueled by a determination I had never felt before. Marcus had essentially told me I wasn't good enough for his new world. I was going to create my own world, one where success was measured by merit, not inheritance. I started working 18-hour days, building websites, creating content, reaching out to potential clients. I used every contact I had made during my corporate career, leveraged every skill I had developed, and pushed myself harder than I ever had before. My apartment became my headquarters, with whiteboards covering every wall, tracking revenue goals, client progress, and growth metrics. The first few months were brutal. I was essentially working 2 full-time jobs, maintaining my position at the tech company while building my businesses on nights and weekends. There were weeks when I survived on nothing but coffee and determination, falling asleep at my laptop and waking up with keyboard marks on my face. But slowly, incredibly, it started working. My first breakthrough came when a small restaurant hired me to redesign their social media strategy. Within 2 months, their online engagement had tripled, and their revenue from online orders had increased by 60%. They were so thrilled with the results that they referred me to 5 other local businesses. Word spread quickly in the local business community. My phone started ringing with inquiries from companies who had heard about the results I was delivering. I was forced to raise my rates just to manage the demand, and even then, I was booking clients 2 months in advance. By month 4, I was making more money from my side businesses than I was from my corporate job. By month 6, I had hired my first employee. By month 8, I was ready to quit my day job and focus entirely on building my empire. The day I walked into my boss's office to give my notice was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Not because I was leaving a bad situation, but because I was choosing to bet everything on myself. The same self that Marcus had deemed unworthy of his new lifestyle. 6 months after leaving my corporate job, I was generating more revenue than I had ever imagined possible. My digital marketing consultancy had grown to a team of 12 people. My online course was selling hundreds of units per month, and the content creation agency was working with Fortune 500 companies. The three-pronged approach that everyone said was too risky had become my greatest strength. But success brought unexpected challenges. Managing 3 businesses simultaneously meant I was constantly putting out fires, jumping between client calls and strategy meetings, trying to maintain quality while scaling rapidly. There were nights when I questioned whether I had taken on too much, whether Marcus might have been right about me being in over my head. Those doubts disappeared every time I looked at my bank statements. In less than a year, I had built something that generated more monthly revenue than Marcus made in his entire corporate salary. The girl he had dismissed as financially inadequate was now earning more in passive income than most people made working full-time. The real turning point came when I received an email that made my heart skip a beat. The subject line read, "Investment Opportunity, Caldwell Capital Group." I recognized the name immediately. It was Marcus's exclusive investment group, the same organization he had chosen over our relationship. The email was from Victoria Caldwell herself, the woman Marcus had left me for. She had somehow discovered my businesses and wanted to discuss a potential partnership. Her tone was professional, almost respectful, completely different from how I had imagined her during those dark weeks after the breakup. I stared at that email for hours, reading it over and over again. The irony was almost too perfect. The same people who had considered me unworthy of their circle were now approaching me as a potential business partner. Part of me wanted to delete the email and pretend it never happened. But a bigger part of me was curious about what they wanted. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Victoria for coffee at an upscale cafe downtown. I spent an entire day preparing, choosing an outfit that projected confidence without trying too hard, rehearsing responses to questions she might ask, steeling myself for what could be an incredibly awkward encounter. Victoria was exactly what I had expected and nothing like what I had imagined. She was polished and professional, wearing what was probably a $5,000 suit, but there was something surprisingly genuine about her demeanor. She didn't carry herself with the entitled arrogance I had anticipated. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," she said, as we settled into our chairs. "I know this situation is unusual, given the personal history involved." I appreciated her directness. No pretending that the elephant in the room didn't exist. "I'll admit I'm curious about what you want to discuss." Victoria smiled, and for the first time, I understood what Marcus might have seen in her beyond her family connections. She had an intelligence behind her eyes that commanded respect. "Your businesses have caught the attention of several people in our investment network. The growth metrics are impressive, particularly given how quickly you've scaled without external funding." She opened a tablet and showed me detailed analysis of my companies that I hadn't provided to anyone. They had clearly done extensive research, probably more thorough than most venture capital firms would conduct. "We're interested in discussing acquisition opportunities, or potentially providing growth capital for expansion. Your marketing consultancy, in particular, has enormous potential for scaling nationally." I listened as she outlined their proposal, trying to keep my expression neutral while my mind raced. They were offering to buy my consultancy for an amount that would make me a multimillionaire overnight. Alternatively, they wanted to invest enough capital to help me expand into 15 major markets within 2 years. "This is quite generous," I said carefully. "But I have to ask, why me? 6 months ago, your organization considered me unsuitable to date one of your members. Now, you want to do business with me?" Victoria's expression shifted slightly, becoming more personal. "Business and personal relationships operate by different rules." Marcus made his choice based on what he thought would advance his position within our group. That doesn't mean we can't recognize talent and opportunity when we see it. The casual way she mentioned Marcus, as if he were just another business associate rather than the man she was presumably in a relationship with, struck me as odd. I filed that observation away for later consideration. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in selling, I said. I've worked too hard building these companies to hand them over now. What about the expansion capital? We could provide the resources to accelerate your growth timeline significantly. I considered her words carefully. The money would indeed allow me to expand faster than I could manage on my own, but accepting their investment would mean bringing the same people who had rejected me into my business as partners. The irony was rich, but was it worth the potential complications? I need time to think about it, I said finally. Victoria nodded and handed me her business card. Of course. This is my direct number. Take all the time you need. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about the conversation had been off. Victoria's professionalism had been almost too perfect, her knowledge of my business too detailed, or her casual mention of Marcus too rehearsed. That evening, I called Jessica to debrief about the meeting. Her reaction was exactly what I expected. They want to buy your business? She practically shouted through the phone. The same people who thought you weren't good enough for their precious investment group now want to give you millions of dollars? That's the general idea. And what did you tell them? That I need time to think about it. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Sarah, you realize this is bigger than just business, right? This is your chance to show Marcus exactly what he walked away from. Imagine him finding out that his new girlfriend's family is paying you millions for the company you built after he left you. She was right, of course. The poetic justice was undeniable. But something about the whole situation felt too convenient, too perfectly orchestrated. Why would Victoria Caldwell personally handle this negotiation when her family's investment group surely had dozens of associates who could manage acquisitions? I spent the next week researching Caldwell Capital Group more thoroughly than I had ever researched anything in my life. What I discovered was both impressive and troubling. They had a history of acquiring promising small businesses, absorbing their best practices and key personnel, then essentially dismantling the original companies and incorporating their methods into larger operations. Several entrepreneurs I contacted described similar experiences. Generous acquisition offers, promises of maintaining company culture and leadership roles, followed by gradual restructuring that eliminated the founders entirely. Within 2 years, most of the acquired companies ceased to exist as independent entities. The pattern was clear. This wasn't just about recognizing my success. This was about neutralizing a potential competitor by absorbing my business into their larger ecosystem. But there was another layer to consider. If they were trying to eliminate me as competition, it meant they saw me as a genuine threat. The businesses I had built from nothing, fueled by anger and determination, were significant enough to concern one of the most established investment groups in the region. That realization was almost as satisfying as the money they were offering. I decided to dig deeper into Marcus's current situation within the group. Through mutual contacts and social media investigation, I pieced together a picture that was far different from the success story he had painted when he left me. Marcus wasn't thriving in his new environment. He was struggling to prove his value to people who had been born into wealth and connections. His consulting business had failed to launch successfully, and he was essentially working as a junior associate for Victoria's father, handling routine administrative tasks rather than the high-level deal-making he had envisioned. Most interesting of all, his relationship with Victoria appeared to be more professional than romantic. They attended events together, but their interactions and photos looked stiff and formal. There were no candid moments, no genuine affection visible in their body language. Jessica's theory was that Victoria was using Marcus as arm candy for business functions while keeping her actual romantic life private. My theory was darker. I suspected that Marcus was being used as a convenient insider, someone who could provide information about potential acquisition targets or competitors. Someone like me. The pieces started falling into place. Marcus would have known about my business ventures through mutual friends or social media. He could have provided detailed information about my background, my motivations, my potential weaknesses. Victoria's comprehensive knowledge of my companies suddenly made more sense. They weren't just trying to buy my business. They were trying to buy the company that Marcus's ex-girlfriend had built out of spite and determination. The personal element wasn't coincidental. It was central to their strategy. Armed with this understanding, I made my decision about their offer. But instead of simply declining, I decided to turn the tables completely. I scheduled another meeting with Victoria, this time at my office. I wanted her to see the operation I had built, the team I had assembled, the success I had created without any help from their network of privilege and connections. When she arrived, I could see her taking in the details of my workspace. The energy of people who believed in what they were building. The walls covered with client success stories. The atmosphere of a company that existed because someone had chosen to bet on themselves rather than accept someone else's definition of their worth. "I've given your offer considerable thought," I began, settling into my chair across from her. "And I have a counter offer for you." Victoria raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting this turn in the conversation. "Instead of you acquiring my business, I want to acquire one of yours." The silence that followed my statement was absolutely delicious. Victoria's perfectly composed expression cracked for just a moment, revealing genuine surprise beneath her polished exterior. I could see her mind racing, trying to process what I had just said. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "You heard me correctly. I want to buy one of your family's businesses, specifically the digital marketing division of Caldwell Enterprises." I had done my homework. Their marketing division was underperforming, hemorrhaging clients to more agile competitors like myself. They were stuck using outdated strategies while the industry evolved around them. It was the perfect target for acquisition. Victoria's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Sarah, I think you might be misunderstanding the scale of what we're discussing here. Our marketing division generates 8 figures in annual revenue, and my company's generated 7 figures in their first year of operation. Growth trajectory matters more than current size, and your division's growth trajectory is negative 15% year over year." I slid a folder across the desk containing my own detailed analysis of their operations. Victoria's eyes widened as she flipped through pages of financial projections, client retention data, and strategic recommendations. "How did you get this information?" "The same way you got information about my businesses. The difference is, I'm being transparent about my intentions." Victoria set the folder down, her professional mask slipping back into place. "Even if what you're suggesting were feasible, which it isn't, what makes you think we would be interested in selling to you?" "Because I'm offering to solve a problem that's been bleeding money for 2 years. Your marketing division is failing because it's being run by people who inherited their positions rather than earning them. I'm offering to turn it around using proven methods and actual talent." The insult hit its mark. Victoria's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And what exactly are you proposing to pay for this acquisition?" I named a figure that made her blink. It was aggressive, but not unreasonable given their division's declining performance. More importantly, it was a number that would force them to take me seriously. "That's an interesting proposal," Victoria said slowly, "but it assumes we're motivated primarily by financial considerations. Aren't you? I thought that's what separated your world from mine. Everything is business, remember? That's what Marcus told me when he walked away from our relationship for a better financial opportunity." Victoria's expression shifted again, becoming more guarded. "Marcus told you that?" "Among other things. He explained how your group evaluates people based on their potential to contribute financially rather than emotionally. how relationships at your level are strategic partnerships rather than romantic entanglements. I watched Victoria carefully as I spoke, noting how her posture changed when I mentioned Marcus. There was tension there, something unresolved or uncomfortable. Marcus has a tendency to oversimplify complex situations, she said carefully. Does he? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like he understood your world perfectly. He identified what you needed from him and delivered exactly that. A presentable partner who could provide insider information about potential business targets. Victoria went very still. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Marcus knew about my business ventures before you approached me. He could have provided detailed information about my background, my motivations, my potential weaknesses. Your comprehensive knowledge of my companies suggests someone gave you inside information. Silence stretched between us, loud-spoken accusations and calculations with Owen. Victoria was clearly deciding how much to admit, how much to deny, and what her next move should be. You're suggesting that Marcus fed us information about you as part of some elaborate scheme. I'm suggesting that Marcus has always been opportunistic. When he left me for your world, he needed to prove his value somehow. What better way than to identify promising acquisition targets from his previous life? Victoria stood up abruptly, moving to the window that overlooked the city. You're giving him far too much credit for strategic thinking. Her tone had changed, becoming more personal, less guarded. For the first time since we had started talking, she sounded like a real person rather than a corporate representative. What do you mean? Victoria turned back to face me, her expression now showing genuine frustration. Marcus is exactly what he appears to be: ambitious, charming, and completely out of his depth in our environment. He thought he could waltz into our world and immediately start making high-level deals and strategic decisions. She returned to her chair, her professional composure cracking further. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply becoming so successful that their rejection becomes irrelevant. Marcus chose money over love, but I chose myself over both. The woman he deemed unworthy of his new world ended up building her own empire instead.